also my friend and business colleague, and most importantly, my co-author on the book, Beyond Bitcoin, Decentralized Finance and the End of Banks. My name is Boykey Sidley. I'm a professor at the University of Johannesburg. I am the director of the Blockchain and Cryptoverse Research Unit of the University of Johannesburg. I'm a co-author with Simon. I'm a director at Bridge Capital. So I read a statistic yesterday that pleased and surprised me in amongst all the terrible news of crashing asset prices. It was the following. The top computer science university in the world is Stanford University. When I say the top, I mean it's the one that has the highest number of applicants for people wanting to go into the field of computer science. The course that is starting this September, there were less applicants for the Introduction to Computer Science course than there were for the Introduction to Crypto and Blockchain course. That single statistic tells you that the smartest intellectual energy in the world is going into the space of crypto. It doesn't matter what we think at whatever age we are, and I'm a boomer. People coming in at 18, this is the area versus the energy used in a fiat transaction. What these guys did is they took the world of fiat and they said, how much does it really cost energy-wise in order for a transaction to do in the real dollar and rands world that we live? They looked at the ATMs, they looked at the air conditioning, they looked at the plastic on the credit cards, they looked at the servers, they looked at the point-of-sale machines. The result of that, and it's the first one that's ever been done, is that a Bitcoin transaction is 50 times more energy efficient, 56 times more energy efficient than a fiat transaction. And if it's on the Lightning Network, it is 1 million times more efficient, energy efficient. So we have this misinformation that is thrown out there, and it's still being thrown out there, and the regulations that just happened in the United States, Biden's executive order, or whatever it was, talked about, oh God, this thing uses so much energy. And what it does is it put a damp on this industry because the reporters are not getting down to the facts. Simon, do you want to comment on the energy question?
It's pretty much been something that's been prevalent for the last 3 years in the discourse around blockchain. And it's interesting because if you trace sort of the genesis of the entire debate around resource consumption and Bitcoin, you come to a tweet that was made by American Express in 2017, which they subsequently promoted. They apparently didn't know that when you promote a tweet on Twitter, it also tells you who promoted it. So I think they thought they were just going to tweet this particular piece of advertorial and promote it, nobody would notice. But it had their kind of name pinned to it as being the promoter of the tweet that really started the wheel rolling in this discussion around Bitcoin's energy consumption. So a few observations. Firstly, if you were looking to attack Bitcoin in 2017, there weren't many vectors for you to use. So resource consumption wasn't their best argument, but it was the only one they had. It's not a very good one, but that's what they chose. And it was kind of immediately silly to anybody who had the reality of Bitcoin's energy consumption in front of them. So for one, if you compare Bitcoin to, the consumption of other human activities, let's pick two that consume more than Bitcoin does. One is tumble dryers. So the world's tumble dryers consume more electricity than the Bitcoin network does. Now, I'm not suggesting that people should tumble dry their clothes. It's a perfectly we save more electricity than the Bitcoin network. Another activity we could stop undertaking to save an equitable amount of electricity is Christmas lights in North America alone. So if North America just stopped putting up Christmas lights at the end of every year, we'd save more electricity than the entire Bitcoin network. So my point is that you very quickly see how ridiculous this argument is. And when you extend it into the rest of the cryptoverse, and you look at what's happening on proof of stake networks, etc., the argument gets even more bizarre.
Yep.
So to me, it's just been a massive distraction, not a massively valuable argument. Of course, we as an industry should be striving to be more efficient, to do more with less. I think the merge has been a fantastic leap forward. But to me, it's been a non-discussion from the get-go.
Right. So, let's put the energy question behind us. I just want to remind you guys of one thing. Crypto mining today, Bitcoin specifically, is 59% green energy. The cell phones that you're handing in that you have in your hands is 35% green energy. Keep that in mind. I want to move on to one other piece of misinformation, which also makes smoke come out of my damn ears, and that is the issue of crime. All we see in the newspapers are these sensational and lurid reports about 150 million stolen there and 80 million there and hacked. All of that is true. We had our deputy governor of the Reserve Bank, and maybe there's some people here from the Reserve Bank, I don't know. The Reserve Bank is a fantastic organization who really does understand the space. Do two things a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was a couple of months ago. Do two things. First of all, he said, this thing's going to be a financial asset. And I read this statement that he made on I think it was on a PSG webinar. Very exciting. Okay, the Reserve Bank is going to regulate this thing properly. It's going to be a financial asset. It's not clear what that really means, because a financial asset, a Bitcoin is kind of like a financial asset. An NFT is kind of like something else. And a vote on a decentralized autonomous organization is nothing like a fantastic. And buying a shield in a game like Axie Infinity or one of the others, or buying it, that's not a financial asset. So how are they going to regulate these crypto financial assets? But at least they're trying to get to grips with this. But then he opens his mouth after this. And if anybody's here from the Reserve Bank, tell them I am pissed off and please talk to him. And he says, my colleagues in America tell me that 90% of all crypto transactions are dishonest. It would have taken him 15 seconds to go to Google and get the real statistic. Here are the real statistics of crime. Chain Analysis is the biggest forensic organization in the world when it comes to analyzing crypto transactions. The number of illicit transactions on all crypto networks in the world is 0.15%. 0.15%. The number of illicit transactions in the world of fiat and rands and dollars is somewhere between 5 and 10%, and those are the only ones we know about. So I wanted to get that out there as well as something that makes smoke come out of the ears, because it is so poorly reported. It doesn't require a journalist to dig any deeper than to have a sensational airline. Okay, I want to move directly into, Simon, I want to talk about the merge. We all know about the merge. A lot of people chose to watch the Queen's funeral procession through London. I chose to watch the merge. It was more meaningful for me. Perhaps it wouldn't be more meaningful for anybody else. But we have the merge finished. We have the surge next. We have the verge after that. We have the purge after that. And we have the splurge after that. There are 4 more points on the milestone, which will take Ethereum to where you can validate nodes on your cell phone to 1 million a second. Simon, I wanted to get your view on how exciting that sounds, given that the merge, which is the most complicated software project in history, by a long way, was so successful.
Yeah, I think one has to give credit to the Ethereum Foundation and to all of the developers involved in pulling off the merge, because it really was so smooth that it was a non-event. It was quite boring, and any technology deployment that's boring means that you've done your job perfectly, because there's nothing to talk about. So I really do feel that Ethereum is now taking leaps ahead, and as a project that's running on the Ethereum network, we've seen the impact immediately. Just making calls to our smart contracts and general activity on the network, you can really feel that at the upside 100x, call it 20x and up performance increase that proof of stake brought to Ethereum. It was a massive undertaking, and it was done so extremely well. And now we're set up for, as you said, these next chapters of upgrades and incorporating new protocols into Ethereum that one touch would hope would go as smoothly. And you get that kind of multiple of performance boost and efficiency boost every time. So I think as we look ahead, to the topic of our talk, which is what crypto winter, this is really the season to be building and to be setting up for the next cycle of growth and hype, which I think we're all expecting to start just before the next Bitcoin halving in 2024, and then to possibly go parabolic after that. I feel like the cadence of development on Ethereum is just the right balance between conservatism in terms of testing and making sure that the technology is robust and that the rollout is sound, but also pushing the envelope a little bit more and moving the network to incorporate new standards that others haven't arrived at yet. So really, I don't think that the stage could be more adequately set for anybody building in the space right now. The merge was a great success, and I believe the next step will be too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to move on. I've got to throw out one other statistic away. Now that I'm a professor of the stuff at UJ, I have to make sure that I have all the statistics at my command, otherwise students go to sleep. This statistic is two very conservative organizations, Citibank, a bank which is about as conservative as they come, and McKinsey, which is a consultancy and not known to be at the bleeding edge of technology. Both of them predict that by 2030, the Metaverse will be a 5 trillion rand business. I can't even digest what 5 trillion means in terms of what to compare that to. This was an interesting statistic for me because I was of the opinion that why would anybody spend any time on the Metaverse at all? I mean, geez, you can go to a website and buy your books from Amazon. Do I have to really go into a 3D environment? But there are a lot smarter people than me and a lot more funds than me. And when these two organizations both come up with a figure between 5 and 10 trillion billion, there's something happening here with the Metaverse. Simon, I want to go directly now to something that you guys launched 3 weeks ago, which sadly flew far more under the radar than I would have liked, is the first institutionally backed South African stablecoin. When USDC, which is the big US stablecoin, did an institutional deal with BlackRock, it was headline news all over America that finally a massive, conservative, highly liquid, old-style, besuited, gray-haired organization had embraced the stablecoin called USDC. Simon and Kenny, his partner at Venox, recently signed a deal with Old Mutual. Can you tell us something about it, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, what we did was we took the cash reserves for ZARP and we've handed them over the management thereof anyway to Old Mutual Wealth, being the oldest trust company in South Africa. That's a deal we've been working on for a while and which we're incredibly proud of. I think it's an easy headline to gloss over, but you've spoken to the significance there of having literally the oldest trust company in South Africa agree to manage the cash reserves of a crypto project. And in our case, that crypto project is a stable coin for the South African rand. So I think that's a pretty good reading of where the local crypto industry is right now, that you'd have an institution the size and weight of Old Mutual ready to dive in and to get involved and to put their brand behind a crypto project. I think that, things are heating up on the regulatory front in South Africa. A lot of good work is being done. We're expecting the next couple of years to be pretty significant in terms of the rollout of the regulatory framework in South Africa, licensing regime and everything that will come with it. So very excited about that announcement, and I think it heralds good times for the local industry.
I want to go back to regulation for just a second. We had talked about my irritation with the South African Reserve Bank getting the crime figures The Law Commission was set up by Parliament in, I don't know, 1795 or something, to advise the government on matters of great complexity which the government doesn't understand and doesn't have the skills. So they asked the Law Commission to ask how to regulate this thing called a crypto asset. The Law Commission paper is a work of great beauty. I have slogged through some of it. It's about, I don't know, 400 pages long. I'm not going to slog through all of it. And the reason why it's a work of great beauty, it is the first regulatory regime that realized that the crypto asset, as I said earlier, whether it's a currency, whether it's an NFT, whether it's a sword in a game, whether it's a vote in a DAO, is something entirely different, and you can't take old regulations which have round holes and put square pegs into them. And so anybody who's interested in that, just go to the Daily Maverick, type in my name at the top, and I have links to all of these things. Simon, I wanted to, we've only got 5 minutes left. There's not a lot of time to cover a lot of ground here in a 25-minute speak. But I wanted to spread the entire cryptosphere open for you, because there's still a great deal of confusion about crypto versus cryptography versus the blockchain. So cryptography is a set of mathematics that sits at the root of a universe of applications that we call generally, in the lingo, crypto. And the blockchain is a set of technological plumbing that expresses this magic. That world has now been separated, thankfully, because it's very wide, and I've said it before in this talk, and I want Simon to comment on this, into cryptocurrencies, into NFTs, which is now a business which is much more important than art, or much wider than art, into GameFi, into owning property in the game, into Metaverse, which has built-in property rights. $2.4 million was paid by Adidas to buy a single plot of land, and Decentraland or one of those. Just decentralized autonomous organizations where you can build an organization in 4 days and raise $40 million to try and buy a copy of the American Constitution, and all the way through to Web3, where the promise is we'll own our own data. I just wanted you to comment on that universe, Simon, and see if you want to add anything, and I think then we'll be done with our time.
Well, I'll say something that's probably controversial, but that is that, as with any industry, the vast majority of what's happening in crypto right now, call it 99%, is complete nonsense, right? It just is. And that's true of any Cambrian explosion. You know, it was true of the early days of the internet. We're in the experimental phase and people are going to try all sorts of things. And I guess I would put as my challenge to the industry is to try and bring this down to a level that people understand in terms of what it means to them. The whole metaverse idea and term is meaningless to me as somebody who's been playing World of Warcraft since 2005. There's absolutely nothing new here that didn't exist in online gaming before, outside of digital ownership of assets in a trustless network. So let's talk about what that means to actual human beings in a way that they'll care, instead of trying to bamboozle them with a term like metaverse, which means absolutely nothing and is nonsense, and where we honestly think people will want to drive the digital versions of Renaults and Fords instead of fly around on dragons, which is possible in these spaces. It doesn't make sense, right? Now, if you're a management consultant trying to sell centralized blockchains and metaverse property to your clients, have at it, because they don't know what they're talking about. You know marginally more, you've got the jargon, and you'll probably make a lot of money doing it. But for the rest of us trying to build meaningful technology for actual human beings, I think now is the time for us to try harder with those narratives, to bring it down to a level that can really get people caring about something that actually matters to them, instead of all of the fluff that we're blowing at them at the moment that they just don't understand. And once we interrogate, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That said, there is a pearl of absolute magnificent beauty that's happening in this industry right now that we're going to see unleashed in the world in the next 4 years. And the winners are going to be those projects that manage to break down those narratives and make it matter to people, the way that Steve Jobs did when he introduced the iPhone, the way that companies like Google and Uber, etc., have managed to do. And I guess that's pretty much the summary of my thoughts on where the industry is right now.
Thanks. Simon, I want to say thank you, and also to That's evidence that although Simon's my friend and business partner and co-writer, we don't always agree on everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for that.